And at this time, I would like to turn the podium over to our Peachy minister, Reverend Mary Ann Macklin.
Thank you, Sherry. We're going to start with a movement meditation, and then I'll offer a poem, and then we'll come back to that movement meditation. It's very simple. If you'd like to stand, you can stand, and you can also do it from your seat. We've done this one before. So it's a centering meditation, and it just very simply begins with your arms down from your side, and you're looking down, and this is Earth. It represents an unwavering stability and just being where we are. And then with this, you do a slight bow, and you come up with your hands now here. And you look out to the horizon, which I love this. This is courage. And this is no matter what is coming, you are here. And you have the ability to be with whatever arises, whether that's a joy or a pain or maybe something scary, that you can be with it. And you can also have people to be with there with you. So it starts here, Earth, and then courage. And this is, you let out a big breath. Woo. And this is calm abiding. This, you're looking up. You're just letting your body land and be. And this is called, it's more like rest. It's allowing the mind to stabilize in a different way. And the focus is almost, it's a soft focus. And that's calm abiding. So with that in our body, I invite those of you who are standing to sit. And this is called From Blossoms by one of my favorite poets, Lee Young Lee. From blossoms comes the brown paper bag of peaches we bought from the boy at the bend in the road where he turned toward signs painted peaches. From laden boughs, from hands, from sweet fellowship in the bins comes nectar at the roadside. Succulent peaches we devour, dusty skin and all, comes the familiar dust of summer, dust we eat. Oh, take what we love inside to carry within us an orchard. To eat not only the skin, but the shade, not only the sugar, but the days, to hold the fruit in our hands, adore it, then bite into the round jubilance of the peach. There are days we live as if death were nowhere in the background. We go from joy to joy, from wing to wing, from blossom to blossom, to impossible blossom, to sweet, impossible blossom. With that poem in us, again, I'm going to invite you into the movement meditation one more time. And this time, there is this thing you like to say, Unitarian Universalist, and that is the interdependent web of all existence, but it ends up in our minds so much. And today's service is about getting that into our spirit, however you define that, our bodies. The interdependent web, we're all connected. The orchard is in it with the peach, the shade. So Earth, connecting, you look down and it's like the opening word Sherry did. It goes beyond, it's Earth, it's planets, it's universe. But we are part of Earth and interconnected in so many ways. A slight bow to honor the earth and our ancestors. And the hands come up and we look to the horizon. And there is courage. And I learned something this week. A friend of mine is a Zen teacher, and she said, I finally got it. Meditation creates more spaciousness. So those feelings, whether it's fear or joy, they have more space. So they aren't so concentrated. Fear makes it like, But think of this, courage, open heart, interconnected. Just think of our galaxy. Courage. Deep breath. Calm abiding. Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you want to do this stretch. And then the hands are out, and we are soft gazing up. And then we are the stars. And of course, we are stars, star stuff. And then I just bring my hands together for balance. And so as this week comes with its own challenges and invitations into so much, you can simply do this in your mind, or you can stand back someplace and just do very simply, earth, courage, calm abiding. Thank you. Lovely way to start. So for those of you who were here last week, I did a service about the Statue of Liberty, which I found fascinating, and learning about her, learning so much more about her. It was very much a teaching sermon and bringing things in, and we learned a lot together. This sermon's a little different in that I find it's more of a journey of perhaps the interdependent web. We're going to go from thing to thing. So just stay with me on the journey. Like, where's she going now? It will make sense. Maybe today, maybe next week, maybe next month. Oh, a year from now. No. But I love, it's more of an inductive way of putting things together, and I love doing that. And so I called this the Tao because it's about the Tao, the Preachy and the Peachy. So we've had the Peachy, but here's a little bit more. Here's my description of the service. I always like to begin with this. This is what I sent out. The peach truck is making its rounds, and the fruitfulness of summer can sometimes provide a little bit of a, buffer to the ongoing assaults on our country's democracy, which I know we're all working to save. But how do we live in these times? How do we find balance? How do we find meaning when things are changing so rapidly? With our earth, with our country, with so much. Then I said, in this sermon, Reverend Macklin suggests we pause to examine our approach to life, including our ontological outlook. Then I put ontological, ? That's a big old word. Ontological outlook is just a fancy way of naming what are our assumptions about the nature of reality, because it makes a big difference to how we engage meaning making. It depends on what we think. How is nature made up? Like the color of a peach. Does that exist on its own? The orange with the reddish blush with pink undertones. Do we exist on our own? Do we? Do I? So I'm going to turn to several theologians to explore this ontological query, including Lao Tsu, who is assumed to be the writer of the Tao Te Ching. It's often thought that maybe there were more people involved. I think it might have been a woman, but As well as Winnie the Pooh, the bear of noted very little brain, who said, "For I am a bear of very little brain, and long words bother me." Many, many moons ago, and I mean many, I was an undergraduate, and for 2 years I was a philosophy major. Then large words began to bother me. So I became a biology major. I think I just got tired of being in ideas, even though I love that. So then I dropped down. I'm like, I'm going to be a biology major. And I went into objectivism. But then objectivism versus subjectivism began to bother me. So I ended up in neurophysiology, where I could study how the brain perceived the universe. But then I had some mystical experience. This is not a judgment, but they were not drug-induced. And started studying the area of neurotheology, which again is the physical brain, but how it relates to religious experiences that people have. Consciousness. What's mysticism? What if we all of a sudden felt ourselves at one with the universe? Eventually, this all led to ministry or something like that. Speaking of ontology and strange experiences, how many of you have read James and the Giant Peach? It's wild. I'm just going to give a very brief synopsis in case you haven't. It begins with this young boy, James, and the tragic death of his parents. I think they were eaten by rhinoceroses. And then he's placed with two cruel ants. But then he escapes, and this person comes along with these magic green crystals that's supposed to make him amazing, but he trips and they fall by an old peach tree. But then the peach tree starts growing and it has one peach and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it's like colossal. And so James goes inside the peach, and there's a group of talking insects in there. And I missed this the first time. Those were insects that were already in the peach, but they got the green crystals too. And they embark on a transatlantic journey to New York City, and they have a lot of challenging things that happen on the way, but they're going to a new home. I did ask AI, I'm going to admit. I said, was the author on anything when he wrote? And AI was like snippy with me. No. This came from creative imagination, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, just check it. I just want to know. Ontology. So first of all, the ontology of this is a fictional story. So there's all of that. But then if we go into the story, so the reality of this story is James' world blends a natural existence, a boy, a garden, cruel guardians, and then a more fantastical ontology. Sentient insects that talk with him, a giant peach that operates as a vehicle, and magical green crystals. So these are two different realities. So it creates a hybrid existence in which James is being defined by both realism and fantasy. And they often say in spiritual growth, we are holding paradox, that we learn, that's part of meditation too. We're holding several truths together. And sometimes we learn something, that's what koans do. They take us to a different place of wisdom that is not purely intellectual. So when you're looking at, okay, we're still on this trip, right? We've been to the peach farm, we've been to James, we're going along. We're talking about ontology. And this plays out in politics big time. Like what do people think of reality? What do Christian nationalists believe reality is about and how it's supposed to be set up? What do Unitarian Universalists and all of our variety think? First, there's objectivism versus subjectivism. Is the world a fixed, independent reality that exists outside human perceptions? Objectivism. Or is reality kind of socially constructed and shaped by our experiences, our language, our culture, our very way of being? Then there's realism versus nominalism. There's a concept like justice. Have an independent, objective existence out in the world. Now, I never thought of that. And I just remember in law school when I was talking to a friend and he said, well, judges, justice is out there, and what they do is they just interpret that. Like it's fixed. And I'm like, have you heard of the gastrointestinal judging? This depends on what the judge ate that day. But this person really believed that there was something very concrete called justice exists, needed. And also being and becoming. Is the universe composed of static permanent objects and essence, like that? Or is reality defined by a continuous process, changing events and change? I began with saying this is about the Tao. Here's chapter 6. The Tao is called the Great Mother, empty yet inexhaustible. It gives birth to infinite worlds. It is always present within you, and you can use it in any way you want. It's from the Tao Te Ching. This ancient philosophy and religion that this came from is known as Taoism. It's thought to have originated in the 4th century BC with writings of the text, the Tao Te Ching, a group of teachings, and it's 81 chapters, but about 5,000 words total. So these are small little chapters. They're like little poems. And it's attributed to that old teacher, Lao Tsu. Taoism focuses on nature and the importance of humanity's harmonious relationship with nature through such practices as compassion, moderation, and humility. Health and longevity are also emphasized. The Tao itself is somewhat ineffable, and I think the Tao Te Ching is trying to explain this thing that you can't explain. And it is considered the essence of all existence. So the Tao is discovering or explaining reality. Now I'm going to tell you about the story of my friend Harold. Not with the purple crayon. No, it's a different Harold. My friend Harold is a particle physicist. And I actually looked this up because I know Harold, and it's like he exists seeing the world in a very unique way. For a particle physicist, the world is not composed of solid objects, but an intricate, dynamic, interwoven, fundamental field with energy and synthesis. There is then, in the end, nothing that separates us from the universe. It's all flowing. Everything's energy. This is energy. It's all made up of energy. It's dense, but it's energy in the end. And when I knew Harold, they've since moved to California. I went through the whole thing when the CERN Large Hadron Collider was created. How many of you have heard of that? Because I'm just going to explain it a little bit. Okay. So in 1964, there was this physicist, Peter Higgs, and several colleagues, which predicted that there was an invisible field that exists across the universe, and that's what gives matter its mass, its weight. So it's basically when the particles are moving through this, they either kind of flow or there's friction, and then that causes weight. So this has a lot of friction with the energy, and that's what gives it what it is. This is me, Marianne Macklin, not a particle physicist, trying to explain this. But they realized that a tiny particle, the Higgs boson, must exist to prove it. However, the technology didn't exist for that. They called the Higgs boson the God particle because they thought it would explain everything. In some ways it did. So in 1994 to 2008, when I knew Harold, there was the approval of the construction of the Large Hadron Collider. Thousands of scientists, Harold was one, engineers and technicians from all over the world worked for a decade to build this giant 17-mile machine and 4 massive particle detectors buried hundreds of feet below the ground. In September 2008, the first beam was sent, September 10th, and the protons were successfully zooming all the way around this 17-mile ring. And then September 19th, disaster struck. This is in 2008. A faulty electrical connection caused a magnet to melt, sparking an explosion that damaged large sections of the tunnel. And they were all like, okay, let's make this better. So they got back, they got it set again. And then 2009 to 2011, there was a lot of things in the news about this. We're looking for the Higgs boson. We can't find it. And Harold did a workshop at our church. And I remember he said that this is like looking for a specific needle in a stack of millions of other needles, not even a haystack, to find this. And they kept coming up, and everything they led to said, this is just statistical noise. This isn't the Higgs boson. And this was what I really remember about Harold. Somebody asked me, goes, well, how do you deal with these failures after failures? Don't you kind of start losing momentum? And he just lit up. He goes, these aren't failures. They're getting us closer. This is every one of them. We learn something from it. It just causes more curiosity about how everything's put together. I mean, he just lit up. It wasn't about failure. This is what it was about. Each dead end simply narrowing the search area. It's not here. Let's look again. And on July 4th, 2012, there was the discovery. 2 independent teams of thousands of scientists, one was called Atlas and the other one CMS, Harold was with Atlas, announced to the world that they had independently found a brand new particle matching the exact properties of the Higgs boson in 2013. They got the Nobel Prize for predicting this 50 years earlier. Now, there was a big joke going around at that time. It says a Higgs boson walks into a church. It wasn't a UU church because there was a priest said, and the priest said, we don't allow Higgs boson in here. And the Higgs boson says, but without me, how can you have mass? He said, we think you matter. And can you help us find our way? W-E-I-G-H, but also Wu Wei from Tao Te Ching. But that's enough of that. Here's the other story that was going on at this time. And I want to say this had a good ending, but Harold and his wife were in a head-on collision. They were heading out of Bloomington on 37, and a car came up. They were stopped at a stoplight. He had not seen them, hit them into the path of an oncoming car. Went to Bloomington Hospital, ended up in Methodist Hospital. Harold had injuries to his legs, his back, face, arms, just the whole 9 yards, as did Denise, not as severe, his wife. And I just remember going up there with the other minister, and we didn't know if they were going to make it. And we got there, and so and Harold was just, you know, thanks, and he opened his eyes and he saw me, and he knew I'd had mystical experiences, and Harold was a hardcore humanist. And he looked at me and goes, I saw a blue light. And I'm like, okay, Harold. And he said, and then he named a certain religious figure came to me, and I'm like, okay. And then he looked at me and goes, not. And I just wept, is what I did, because there he was. Another reason I tell this story is that they were in a rehab for a long time. They got back to Bloomington, and we said, what can we do for you? And he said, you know, I'd really like if somebody would come and read the Tao Te Ching. Just ongoing, a chapter or two, every day. I'm like, wow. This has an even deeper meaning to me now. Here's chapter 7. The Tao is infinite, eternal. What is eternal? It was never born, thus it can never die. Why is it infinite? It has no desires for itself. Thus it is present for all beings. The wise ones stay behind. That is why they are ahead. They detach from all things. That is why they are one with them. Because they let go of themselves. They are perfectly fulfilled. Chapter 7. And I think of Harold listening to that. The way of the Tao is to learn to flow with the essence of our inner nature, with the outer nature, as opposed to how we tend to either suppress it, we either tend to push forward in life, or we will resist it. There's this whole concept of Wu Wei within Taoism, and this is the kind of action, a little bit through inaction. It's often emphasized in Taoism. In the book, The Tao of Pooh, by Benjamin Hoff, Wu Wei is called Pooh Wei, as in Winnie the Pooh, because of this effortless bear that just pretty much is most of the time. Wu Wei literally means without doing, causing, or making. Hoff suggests that on a practical level, Wu Wei means to engage life without being so meddlesome, combative, egotistical, sometimes clever tampering or monkeying around. It is like water which flows around things in its path or solely creates its own path over time. And here's a story by the Taoist teacher Chung Tse, emphasizing the nature of Wu Wei. At the gorge of Lu, the great waterfall plunges for thousands of feet, its spray visible for miles. In the churning water below, no living creature can be seen. But one day, Kung Fun Se was standing at a distance from the pool's edge when he saw an old man being tossed about in the turbulent water. He called out to his disciples, and together they ran to rescue the victim. By the time they reached the water, the old man had climbed out on the bank and was walking along, singing to himself. Kung Fun Se hurried to him. You would have to be a ghost to survive that, but you seem to be a man. What secret power do you have? Nothing special, the old man replied. I began learning something while very young and grew up practicing it. I go down with the water and I come up with the water. I follow it and forget myself. I survive because I don't struggle against the water's superior power. That's all. It's that allowing our inner nature to flow with the laws of nature, right? Just how do you do that, Pooh? Do what? Pooh asked. Well, you become so effortless. Well, I don't do much of anything, he said. But all of those things of yours, they seem to get done. Well, they just sort of happen. Chapter 37, Tao Te Ching. The Tao never does anything, yet through all, things are done. If powerful women and men could center themselves in it, the whole world would be transformed by itself in its natural rhythms. Think of when we were doing earth, courage, calm abiding. If powerful women and men could center themselves in it, the whole world would be transformed. By itself, in its natural rhythms, people would be content with their simple, everyday lives in harmony and free of desire. When there is no desire, all things are at peace. And by the way, Taoism and Buddhism have crossed over a lot with each other. The Buddha says, do not expect, and ye shall have all things, which I always have to chuckle whenever I say that. Because I'm like, yeah, right? But think about it. If you're not expecting, if you're not desiring, you're here. And of course, none of us in a Western society, the majority of us here, were not taught the wisdom of the Tao while we were growing up. We were taught a very different reality. Commercials on television, and the message, you must desire this because you're not good enough the way you are. So you must desire this. That just gets pounded into us over and over. I mean, look at it now. In our country, you must desire looking young. You must desire this. You must desire that. Earth, courage, calm abiding. my spiritual mentor, Angela Arian, said, we are always pushing or resisting. I mean, it's just like it takes 1 foot, or we're doing this, and we can be doing this. Having trouble, Piglet? The lid on this jar is stuck, gasped Piglet. Here, Pooh, you open it. Pooh, said Piglet. What did you do to do that? Nothing really, said Pooh. But how did you get the lid off, asked Tigger. It's easy, said Pooh. You just twist on it like this until you can't twist any harder. Then you take a deep breath, and as you let it out, you twist. That's all. Let me try that, yelled Tigger, bouncing into the kitchen. Where's the new jar of pickles? Here it is. Tigger, began Piglet nervously. I don't think you better. Nothing to it, said Tigger. Just twist and... Aw, slipped out of my paw, explained Tigger. He tried too hard, said Pooh. When we're trying hard, we're pushing, right? We're doing that. And I have a lot of those Tigger characteristics, there's no doubt about it. Piglet is pulling back in fear a lot. And we all do this. It's when we begin to observe it and we can see it and maybe choose a little different. Maybe choose this go earth. You don't even have to do the rest of it, just. Frank Ostiaski started the Zen hospice in San Francisco. And he had worked there a long time. And then he had a friend who was dying of AIDS. And I'll never forget, Frank writes about this one scene. And here he'd been studying Zen, doing all this stuff, and he was with his friend. And at one point, his friend looked over at him. I think his friend was in the bathroom, and Frank was trying to help out, blah, blah, blah. And he said, stop trying so hard. It's hard, right? We want to help somebody, maybe ourselves. As you move into each new position in your life, whether you're opening a jar, dealing with relationships, dealing with changes in our lives, in our country, how do we find that earth, courage, calm, abiding? On the great scale of the universe, in this blue-green planet we call home, it's been here for 4.6 billion years, and we humans are but a blip. This is a poem by Drew Dellinger. It is 3:23 in the morning, and I am awake because my great-great-grandchildren won't let me sleep. My great-great-grandchildren ask me in my dreams, what did you do when the planet was plundered? What did you do when the earth was unraveling, on fire? Surely you did something when the seasons started changing and failing as the mammals, reptiles, birds were all dying. Did you fill the streets with protest when democracy was stolen? What did you do once you knew? Poem by Drew Dellinger. Important questions, but don't allow yourself to get caught in the, oh. It might be that now and then. But my hope right now is for everyone, whatever you're dealing with, is you find that place where when you are called to action, not when you think you have to act, when you're called to action, you can do it, right? Wherever you are. In the grocery store, perhaps you will be out protesting, whatever it is. You can move from the center. You can open that pickle jar without it slipping from your hands. Chapter 39, the Tao Te Ching. In harmony with the Tao, the sky is clear and spacious. The earth is solid and full. All creatures flourish together, content with the way they are, endlessly repeating themselves, endlessly renewed. When humanity interferes with the Tao, the earth becomes depleted. The equilibrium crumbles. The wise ones view the parts with compassion because the they understand the whole. Their constant practice is humility. They don't glitter like a jewel, but let themselves be shaped by the Tao as rugged and common as stone. Again, my spiritual elder, Angeles Arian, recommends that we spend at least 1 hour outdoors each day. Now, it's not always possible, but I certainly know when I do that, my day is different. I have experienced myself as part of that reality in nature. And I do, I go from a faster speed to, she's always going medium to slow, medium to slow. And I slow down when I experience that. And that may be sitting inside and looking out and seeing something. Yesterday, I was at the mall because my sandals are starting to fall apart. And I thought, are you going to wear those to church again? Because they're falling apart. They didn't have the sandals. But a friend called and I said, wait a minute. And I went outside and I stood under a tree to talk to her. And the difference from being in the mall and having a conversation with her, and she goes, are you still at the mall? I go, I'm outside standing underneath a tree. This completely different conversation. And it needed to be. I knew that with her at that time for both of us. An hour outdoors each day. So getting away from the materialistic, anthropocentric, competition-based, class-stratified, violence-prone, unsustainable way that we've been taught into a more imaginative, soul-centric, cooperation-based, just, compassionate, and sustainable way of being. Where are we going now, said Pooh. Nowhere, said Christopher Robin. After they had walked a little way, Christopher Robin asked, what do you like to do best in the world, Pooh? Now, Pooh said that he enjoyed being with Christopher Robin and eating. I like that too, Christopher Robin said, but what I like best is nothing. How do you do nothing? This is a nothing sort of thing we're doing now. It means going along, listening to all the things you can't hear and not bothering. I think being part, seeing the natural world as part of our existence and understanding, or having that become more of our relationship, is part of growing up, maturing. We get away from a toxic environment like James and the giant peach. And we might find ourselves a supportive community. But then we find our inner calling and how that matches the outer calling. Embodying earth, courage, and calm abiding. Lastly, from the Taoist poet Lu Yu, the clouds above us join and separate. The breeze in the courtyard leaves and returns. Life is like that. So why not relax? Who can stop us from celebrating? I think I'm going to get a bumper sticker that says, why not relax? And just put that out into the world. Thank you for journeying with me. There's something here that I don't think I even understand yet. But there's something very, very powerful about the Tao Te Ching, about Taoism, about who we are, particularly in these times when we are being told over and over what reality is and isn't. And trusting that wisdom inside, trusting those around us who we know are good to trust. And being in the world in a way that we can flow with it, but also bring our truth and our sense of justice to the world. Thank you.
Well, that's a hard act to follow, but I will offer some closing words. Friends, thank you for your witness to all that exists on the margins. Thank you for your commitment to hold yourselves and one another in great and steadfast love. Moving forward from this space, may we continue to nurture spiritual growth. May we continue to travel along the winding pathway to healing from whatever brokenness we individually and collectively hold, knowing that we do not journey this path alone. Blessed be.